Aston Villa fans are having a season to remember in the UEFA Champions League, sitting third in the table out of 36 teams, 13 points from 6 games with 2 games remaining, including wins against Bayern Munich, draws against Juventus, and now a terrific victory away to RB Leipzig. And I couldn't be happier for Aston Villa and their fans. Now I'll tell you why. Look, I'm not a pure Aston Villa fan, but I do look out for their results every single weekend. One of my best friends was a massive Aston Villa fan. Sadly, he's not with us anymore, so I do want them to do well and check out their results. Watching Aston Villa yesterday, they look back at it, and the tactics implemented from Unai Emery were absolutely superb. So in this video, I want to break down everything they did right and how they exposed RB Leipzig. Firstly, I want to mention there are no mugs in the UEFA Champions League. When you play away from home, I'm so happy Aston Villa aren't just sitting back, looking to defend, parking the bus, and then trying to get teams on the counter-attack. They're actually being so brave in everything they do. It's exposing the opposition. So firstly, let's look at how they set up. Everybody knows RB Leipzig are a side that want to be compact. Look at their average positioning. It's extremely central. So the room is around the outside. So naturally, you would think Aston Villa's 4-2-3-1 shape would be ideal for this. 2 wingers occupying space high and wide, and that's the way you get around RB Leipzig. But Aston Villa's wingers are slightly different. You think about when John McGinn or Morgan Rogers plays on the left. They come inside and look to support the striker. That is a key component of Aston Villa. And instead of taking that away, Unai Emery's adapted these tactics to do both, and it worked to absolute perfection. So Unai Emery's obviously sat there and thought, look, how can we continue to get bodies around Ollie Watkins or John Duran, whoever's playing up front at the time, but also expose the width? Okay, let's go to a 5 at the back. Okay, let's play with wingers. A lot of managers would have continued to play with wingers. So Unai Emery played with 2 defenders out wide, and again, it worked perfectly. So as you can see, start with 3 conventional centre-halves, Konza, Carlos, and Pau Torres. He had Lucas Digne occupying the left wing-back position and Matty Cash, surprisingly, occupying the right wing-back position. This was a genius in a masterstroke by Unai Emery because it allowed players to be committed going forward, but it also gave them that defensive celerity that they needed. And if you look at the average positioning, it was almost a 3-2-5, and RB Leipzig couldn't cope with the amount of bodies that Aston Villa committed forward. And because they provided width as well, this completely opened up Aston Villa, and this gave the license for John McGinn or Morgan Rogers to occupy those inner channels, and it just drove RB Leipzig players insane. They just could not cope with the amount of runners that were getting in behind or finding space. It just pulled RB Leipzig in and out of their position, and it was just a genius performance from Aston Villa, and the application from the players was absolutely tremendous. So you need to give them credit for applying these tactics to an absolute T. And if you look at the average position of Lucas Digne, I know Ian Matson came on in the second half, but he did the exact same. And then Matty Cash, it's extremely advanced, high and wide, and this caused RB Leipzig a lot of problems because it pulled their fullbacks wider, and this opened up the inner channels for the likes of John McGinn, Morgan Rogers to exploit, even Yuri Tillemans at times. Now, if we look at Aston Villa's opening goal, who is it that gets the cross in? Who is it that gets the pre-assist? It's Matty Cash. He's not normally in those areas in Premier League games, so this was obviously a tactic worked on, and it was a beautiful cross. Ollie Watkins did superbly well here, pulling away from his man, finding that yard of space, and then what did he have? He had bodies committing themselves into the penalty area. Full credit to John McGinn because he anticipated what Ollie Watkins was going to do, and that's where the opening goal comes from. But again, it's from Unai Emery allowing these players to get forward, being brave in their runs, being brave and exposing RB Leipzig. If you look, they're pretty much man for man. There's 5-on-5 in that penalty area. It was just superb. RB Leipzig players just couldn't cope with the amount of bodies and runs from deep that Aston Villa were doing. And again, their second goal, although it was a superb strike from John Duran, the build-up phase was absolutely sublime. It was just a pure joy to watch. Look at the bodies they've got in and around John Duran. RB Leipzig players didn't know who they were picking up, and runners were just coming off them. The amount of bodies that Aston Villa committed forward just opened up space in the RB Leipzig structure. And because you had Matty Cash, Lucas Digne providing the width, this allowed Morgan Rogers and John McGinn to do what they love to do, come inside and support the striker. By doing this, it draws attention towards John McGinn, towards Morgan Rogers, which opens up space for John Duran to receive the ball. And then the little passage sequence, one touch play from Yuri Tillemans, Morgan Rogers and John Duran was absolutely superb. And RB Leipzig looked lost. They did not know how to cope with the movement and the fluidity of Aston Villa. If you were to watch John Duran's goal in isolation, you would see it was just a moment of brilliance. But this wasn't just a moment of brilliance. This was a perfectly worked goal and something that obviously worked on the training pitch of how to build up to that initial stage. Yes, granted, the strike was unbelievable from John Duran, and he's got that in his lock. But the build-up phase is not getting spoken about enough. The movement, the fluidity, the chemistry of the players. Unai Emery is perfectly building an army on that football pitch. Unai Emery doesn't always play with wing-back, so this is obviously a tactic he's implemented just in this game. And without that wing-back, that goal doesn't get scored because it doesn't pull RB Leipzig fullbacks high out wide. And that makes the room for Aston Villa to progress the ball through the central areas and then cause RB Leipzig a lot of problems. And the third and final goal comes from something similar. Yes, it's slightly lucky, it gets a deflection, but I believe you earn your own luck in football. And again, being brave and committing bodies forward. So unfortunately for copyright issues, I wasn't able to show a recording of the goal, but I took screenshots instead. And this is John Duran picking up the ball in the central areas. And then you've got Ian Matson out wide, and John Duran tries to find him. The kid intercepts a pass, and then it falls to Ross Barkley, who's not even in this picture, but you can just see the amount of bodies that Aston Villa are committing forward. You've got Ian Matson making a run. You've got John Duran. You've got John McGinn making a run. You've got Morgan Rogers making a run. You've got Matty Cash out wide making a run. RB Leipzig didn't know what hit them. And then because Aston Villa were just suffocating RB Leipzig, they were able to pick up that second ball. And it falls to Ross Barkley. He has a strike. It takes a deflection. You earn your own luck in football. And Aston Villa fully deserved that 3-2 victory. In fact, they were better than what the scoreline suggests because they pulled apart RB Leipzig last night. Not many teams do that against RB Leipzig. This was a really convincing win from Aston Villa. But not only did Unai Emery get his tactics right, he also picked the right profiles for the application of the tactics. Having Matty Cash and Lucas Digne high wide allowed them to get back and defend as well. So you've got that defensive security. But John McGinn and Morgan Rogers, even though they might not have touched the ball, their movement caused RB Leipzig a lot of problems. And when you get Morgan Rogers in those central areas where he can pull away from his man, receive the ball and be direct with his dribbling, honestly, he's just a joy to watch. Look at Yuri Tillemans' average heat map. It's in those final thirds, in those advanced areas. But it's Boubacar Kamara that I want to talk about because he was simply outstanding yesterday. He was an unsung hero and everything good about Aston Villa. He secured that backline with defensive actions. He got on the ball. His decision-making on the ball, his awareness of where to be off the ball, but also how to be on the ball was absolutely superb. This kid is such an intelligent footballer. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. And I actually think he's everything. He epitomizes everything what's good about Aston Villa. He was the cog in everything good about Aston Villa yesterday. Yes, he might not got the plaudits of an assist or a goal, but his protection of that backline in those central areas allowed the likes of Morgan Rogers, John McGinn, Yuri Tillemans, Ollie Watkins, Lucas Digne, Matty Cash to get forward. So he deserves a lot of credit because his discipline last night was superb. And yes, you can say they conceded 2 goals. I understand that. But it wasn't like they got broken down and absolutely pulled apart. I actually think both goals were mistakes. The centre-back should never let the ball bounce. And I think they'll be eating themselves up about doing that. And I think RB Leipzig's last goal was actually just a great finish. And when you come up against teams in the Champions League, they're going to have this quality. But that's 3 wins on the bounce for Aston Villa. And it looks like they're getting their mojo back. They look fluid. They look solid defensively. They look extremely positive right now, and I couldn't be happier for them. Couldn't be happier for their fans, and long may it continue. Aston Villa fans must be in dreamland because everything's in their hands. They've got Monaco and Celtic left to play in the Champions League, and if you would offer them this position at the start of the season, they would have bit your hand off. In fact, they probably would have bit your arm off. They're in a wonderful position. I called it at the start of the season. I tweeted out that Aston Villa would make it to the later rounds of the Champions League because I knew they had this in their locker. When they're on it, they're such a difficult team to control. So look, full credit Aston Villa. Full credit Unai Emery, full credit the players for their application. And if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and yeah, long may it continue because this is so fun to watch. But I just want to say I appreciate your time watching this video, and until next time, ciao for now.